No?
Okay, tell me when you started and I will just start admitting.
Yeah. Now we're starting it.
Yeah?
And now you see this picture, right?
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna start admitting everyone in.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I cannot really tell exactly how many of you are with us so far, but we will wait a few minutes and then we will start probably 5 past. Because from our experience, it seems like most of the time 5 past, most people are in. So if you wanna get a drink, go to the toilet, do anything, you have a few minutes to do that. Okay, so we give it 1 more minute and then I think, because I don't see anyone really dropping in at the moment, so 1 more minute and then we start. So I think we will slowly start now, and I think my colleagues will help to let people in if they are coming later. So, welcome everyone to this meeting of About and About for Taxes for Beginners. My name is Jonathan, and I'm currently in sunny Berlin. I'm working with Dance Connect since around 1.5 years, and I'm mainly handling communication, but I've also been handling these presentations. We did also similar About and About workshop sessions for Distansen recently, and we also continue with this format a bit more. And we see also that a lot of people were interested, so you guys that got a spot should be lucky. The rest are now streaming on YouTube, and this is also our first try with this format. So if you're watching on YouTube now, and if it doesn't really work, I'm very sorry. Hopefully we can make it better next time. If it works great, I'm very happy. I see now we have 22 people watching on YouTube as well. So I guess hello to you too. With me today, I also have Dominic Hodal, Alicia Gaspari, Tom Bergman, and then also Heike Zimmermann, who is the steuerberaterin, who will also introduce herself more later. And also about this forum, we will start now with this presentation. So this is the plan for tonight's meeting. We will start with a presentation now, led by Heike, and then we will have questions and open discussion afterwards. And it's going to be a lot of information. And please, if you have any questions, write them privately in the chat to Dominic, and he will then note it, and we will then take all the questions together later. Also, I will go on through a next slide as well. We always have a Zoom etiquette when we meet, and we have this kind of meetings for Dance to Connect. And so it's basically for better sound quality, it's better if you use a headset. I'm a very bad example now because I'm not using one, but it's because I'm not at home and I don't have one. And also, if you could put your name and also use your video, would be great, because it's also nice for us to see who is here and who's taking part in the meetings, and also it makes it feel more personal in a way. And if you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute as well, so we don't disturb the presentation. And like I said before, you don't have to put your video on, but it would be very nice if you also would open up your camera. And also, like I said before, if you have any questions, write them in the chat. Better is to write them directly, privately to Dominic, and he will note them. And also throughout the whole meeting, you can also react, give thumbs up, applause, +1 in the chat if it's something you agree with. We're not going to do so much discussing today, so I think that won't really be the case. But if you still feel like supporting the team or supporting Heike, you're very welcome to do so. I will also moderate today. And we normally use this, we used to be a blue hand, but at the moment it's not blue anymore. I think it actually is yellow. So if later on throughout the questions, if you ask a question, you can raise your hand, and then I will then either unmute you or ask you to speak. I'm just going to have a quick look before we start here. Yeah, one more thing was before we start. As you all know, we are streaming. I think you all get information on YouTube, but also I might take a few screenshots throughout the meeting for a social media account. And if somebody has a problem with this or really doesn't want their picture or name to be shown, please also write then Dominic privately in a chat, or any of our other team members. If you feel more, you can also write me if you want to, and we will then blur you out or delete you from any social media posts. And if you don't have a problem with it, then just sit back and relax and enjoy the meeting. So I will now give over to Heike, who will then introduce herself. And this presentation should take around 40-45 minutes. It might be longer, it might be shorter. But Heike, you're very welcome to unmute yourself and take over if you want to.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the introduction. Before we start with today's topic, I would like to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Heike Zimmermann. I'm a tax consultant running my own business in the city of Munich. I have specialized my work with taxes in the dance field for more than 10 years now. And my own passion for dance has led me to my current focus on the tax advice for professional dancers and dance teachers working in employments as freelancers or doing both, freelancing besides employment. I also work with a lot of dance schools and other organizations in the dance field. Currently, probably 98% of my clients are from the dance field. To get started now, I think it's also important to explain why we picked the topic taxes for this conference. So first of all, everybody working in Germany is affected by taxes, and that also applies to dancers. When telling people that I work as a German tax consultant, very often they reacted like, oh, German tax law, that's a jungle for normal humans. My purpose is now to shed light on this jungle with speaking about from my experience, most important points with regard to dancers' taxation. Not all rules might be relevant for the individual, and it's not about making the dancer a tax expert. There are professionals around to help with this, but everybody should be aware of relevant rules applying to him or herself. During my work, I found out that there are a lot of niches in taxation, especially for artists. And there are a lot of details which would lead way too far for today's topic, but maybe we have the chance then to continue the tax presentation row at some point. So let's take away the fear from the tax topic, face the issue, and use the possibilities to lower taxes. For this presentation, the different working areas of dancers are split up in 4 themes. Generally, we have employees, freelancers, dancers who are employed and freelancing at the same time, as well as dancers living in Germany with foreign or overseas assignments. So we will speak about employees, meaning theater-engaged dancers, freelancers, meaning self-employed dancers, including school owners who run their schools as individuals, dancers working at employees and freelancers at the same time, and last but not least, the dancers who live here in Germany and also have assignments in foreign countries. This last point comes up with all the aforementioned scenarios. Before we get deeper into the matter now, also for liability reasons, I would like to point out that there are a lot of different types of taxes in Germany. And due to the complexity and time limitation, I picked only VAT, the value-added tax, which is Umsatzsteuer in German, and income tax, which is Einkommensteuer in German. The following information can only give a rough overview over possibly relevant issues for each individual. This presentation does not replace a necessary individual tax advice. Details in each individual case can make the tax situation entirely different. In this presentation, I deliberately refrained from the citation of paragraphs to keep it as simple as possible. Since there are always due dates for taxes, I would like to anticipate these due dates that everybody has them in mind. So for everyone, employees as well as freelancers who has to do yearly tax declarations, the due date is July 31st of the following year without the help of a tax consultant. So for the calendar year 2020, it would be 31st of July this year. And the due date is February 28th, the year after the following year, with the help of a tax consultant. At this point, I also have to point out that there are bookkeeping service companies and also some non-profit organizations who offer help with tax declarations, but are actually not entitled to submit taxes officially as tax consultant. So when using these services, only the due date for individuals without the help of an official tax consultant applies. And to the tax office, this looks like one has done the tax declaration without any help. And for VAT, depending on certain circumstances, such as just have started the business or the yearly amount of VAT exceeds a certain limit, a preliminary turnover tax declaration has to be submitted in different fixed time intervals also. And for those who have a monthly obligation to submit the preliminary turnover tax declaration, the due date is the 10th of the following month. For those who have a quarterly obligation, it is the 10th after the end of the relevant quarter. If the 10th falls on a weekend, Saturday or Sunday, or a holiday, the due date becomes the next workday. So due days for tax purposes never run out on a weekend or a holiday. Now we get into the real matter and start with the employees. The relevant type of tax for the employees is the income tax. The employees get a payroll from their employer. The payroll shows the wage tax deducted. That wage tax deducted basically is a prepayment on the yearly income tax for the individual. For only employees who have no other income and no special circumstances apply, there's generally no obligation to submit an income tax declaration. But of course, there are exceptions to this rule. Employees do have an obligation to file a tax declaration, for example, if they are working for more than one employer at the same time, if they are married and chose the tax class combinations 3 and 5 or 4 and 4 with a factor. Also, there is the obligation to submit a tax declaration if progression income is received. That is, for example, the income that was earned before or after leaving, before coming to Germany or after leaving from Germany, or for example, if unemployment money was received or sick pay from the health insurance. Also, if there's any other income such as rent, also renting out the apartment with Airbnb over the summer break or else would have to be declared. And of course, one has to file a tax declaration if the tax office claims it. In this case, action is definitely needed to avoid disadvantages or risks. At least one would have to react and tell the tax office why they have the opinion that there would be no obligation to file a tax return. And what is important also now is the obligation to declare taxes also applies if short work money, in German Kurzarbeitergeld, has been received. This point is relevant for most employees in the Corona crisis. Most of the theaters in Germany, as far as I know, have applied for short-time work. So even if there has never been the obligation to submit an income tax declaration, it may be the first time for the calendar year 2020 due to this short-time work money, in German Kurzarbeitergeld. And these aforementioned points are not complete. When not sure if certain circumstances might lead to an obligation to submit a tax declaration, a tax consultant should be asked about it. For the taxation purposes, employers as well as social security institutions have to submit the data electronically to the tax office. The figures submitted to the tax office are shown on the wage tax certificate, in German Lohnsteuerbescheinigung. That looks a bit like a chart and has some figures in it. So when submitting the tax declaration, the tax office already has these numbers from the wage tax certificate, and also from social security institutions, and also, for example, from the employment agency. What the tax office does not know and has to be declared are especially the individually deductible expenses. The expenses can belong to different cost categories in the tax sense and have to be filled in different appendixes. But to give you an idea what can be relevant for taxes, it is worth mentioning, for example, the job ticket to go to work for using public transportation, then travel expenses for being not at the regular place of employment. In German, this point is called Auswärtstätigkeit. And to explain this quickly, there was a reformation on the travel expense right since 2014. Since then, only one establishment can be considered your first place of employment. And to go to this first place of employment, only the simple distance in kilometers with a cost factor of 30 cents per kilometer. No matter how you go to work, by car or by bike or by foot, counts. And since this calendar year, from the 21st kilometer, the factor increases to 35 cents per kilometer. And these commuting expenses are called Pendlerpauschale. So to get back to the point of not being at the regular place of employment, if you are away from this place and you're home, not only the simple distance to go there can be taken into account, but all driven kilometers or actual traveling expenses, as well as flat fee food allowances, when being absent from your home or the regular place of employment for more than 8 hours, which is a full working day. To get to the next point, also expenses for studying while working would be deductible. A lot of dancers I met study choreography or teaching besides working at a theater. So the university fees, as well as traveling expenses and working materials, for example, paper, books, pencils, or else, are tax deductible. To the next point, with a double household, I must say that this point is in fact very hard to push through at the tax office and needs a lot of reasoning. The tax office questions a lot in this respect, probably because this often ends in huge tax refunds for individuals. A double household in the tax sense means that the residency and the apartment has been kept in the other place than we're currently working, and also there are traveling expenses for going back and forth between these two places, and it has to be proved that the main living interest is still at the other place, not where working currently. If that is the case, the rent paid in Germany, as well as traveling expenses and flat fee food allowances for a certain amount of time, are tax deductible. And the tax office also requires a certain amount of times that somebody actually went back to the place where the main living interests are stated. As I said before, this is quite difficult to push through at the tax office, but I wanted to mention it because it applies to many of my clients, and actually they expect a lot of money back from this. Other small positions deductible as work-related expenses are, for example, sports dance clothes, then washing costs for dance clothes, or electronic devices that are necessary to do training and also stay in touch with other colleagues. And to the last point, this belongs to a different category, but also home-related services from the operational cost bill from the landlord. In German, this is called haushaltsnahe Dienstleistungen und Handwerkerleistungen, or the working hours for getting things repaired in the household, such as the washing machine, or costs for a cleaning woman or babysitter, lower taxes with 20% of the amount stated in the bill. There's a maximum amount though, but in normal individual tax declarations, it is hardly reached. For this position, it is important that the bill is not paid in cash, and the bill has to be safe because the tax office requests here the bill and also a proof for the payment. And a bank account sheet where the payment can be seen would have to be added. The second working scenario we mentioned in the beginning were the freelancers. A lot of dancers might not be aware that as freelancers, there are entrepreneurs with all tax rights and duties. For entrepreneurs, there is the obligation to submit tax declarations, definitely. The relevant tax types here are VAT, the German Umsatzsteuer, and income tax in German Einkommensteuer. Regarding the VAT, preliminary turnover tax declarations might have to be submitted. In general, it's monthly or quarterly. Also, a yearly VAT tax declaration has to be submitted. And besides the VAT, freelancers have to submit a yearly income tax declaration. And since the freelancers receive their revenue in Germany before tax deduction, in some cases, depending on the height of income, it is recommendable to make a proposition to the tax office about quarterly income tax prepayments. And the height would depend on the individual income. This would make sense to not end up with very high payments only after submitting the tax declaration, because the tax office claims very often the same amount that has to be paid for the last year as prepayment for the present year. So some people end up paying the double amount. With regard to the prepayment, adjustments can be made after the application to the tax office. Also, overpayments would be refunded, but as a freelancer, calculations should be constantly made to be able to make better financial plans. So what are the first steps for freelancers to do after they have registered their residency in Germany to get started with their work and being able to submit the aforementioned tax declarations? The freelance business has to be registered at the tax office to get a tax number. That tax number has to be written on the invoices. The tax number is not to be confounded with the Steueridentifikationsnummer everybody gets after registering the residency in Germany. Also, it is very important to learn how to correctly invoice in different cases. There are different options and regulations with respect to VAT that have to be known before invoicing clients. So invoices include, and in some cases do not include, German VAT. Basically, there are two cases for invoices without VAT that happen a lot. The first is to invoice, the first is an option to invoice without charging VAT to clients as a small business. In German, that's the so-called Kleinunternehmerregelung. This option can be chosen if the revenue in the last year was less than 22,000 euros on the one hand, and that amount can only be taken proportionally when the business was started during the year. On the other hand, the estimated income for this year must be less than 50,000 euro. Then one can choose to run a small business as Kleinunternehmer. If the Kleinunternehmerregelung is chosen, the invoice has to include that information and VAT cannot be charged. The second case for invoicing without VAT is that the client runs the business in a foreign country. In that case, the so-called reverse charge system applies. In that case, a note about the reverse charge system has to be included on the invoice. Invoices are without VAT, of course, also if there is an exemption from VAT by law. But we will get to this in detail on the next slide then. In other than the above mentioned cases, invoices generally include VAT. If none of the aforementioned cases apply, Invoices have to include a VAT if the client is tax resident in Germany. And when charging VAT to clients, the input tax reduction is applicable, meaning that basically expenses are only paid for net. The amount of VAT included in the invoice for the expense returns with the preliminary turnover tax declaration or with the yearly VAT declaration. There's also the option to charge VAT on the relevant taxable revenue and not use the small business regulation, even though the Kleinunternehmerregelung would be applicable. This could make sense if bigger investments are planned, and the investments in the end is only does only have to pay for net because the input tax can be claimed back from the tax office. When choosing to charge VAT, the method would have to be kept for 5 years. It must be well considered because when changing billing methods during a year, this change has to be reported to the tax office, and also revised bills would have to be sent to clients. Clients are mostly not happy about getting revised bills because they would also have to revise their preliminary turnover tax declaration or VAT declaration. As mentioned before, invoices without VAT can also be related to VAT exemptions. That we will see on the next slide. For the stage artists, the emphasis here is on the word stage. Choreographers and dancers have the possibility to apply for a VAT exemption certificate. The application has to be sent to the relevant federal state government, and the certificate can be issued retroactively for 4 years in general. The effect depends on the statutory limitation of the VAT tax assessment concerned. Also, here it has to be kept in mind when applying retroactively that invoices to clients might have to be revised. It is important to say that commercial work for TV, film, or else will not be exempted from VAT. The exemption is only valid as far as jobs are comparable to what is offered from state theaters. So the stage art must be the center of the event. Also, dance school owners have the possibility to apply for a VAT exemption certificate at the relevant federal state government. If a school is exempted from VAT, this certificate is also valid for the teachers. So for the teachers, it is important that they ask the school owner if the school is exempted from VAT, and if so, to please give them a written confirmation about the VAT exemption with a copy of the school VAT exemption certificate. It can make a huge difference for the individual, as we will see on the next slide. The revenue exempted from VAT, as well as revenue from clients in foreign countries, do not count to the small business revenue limit of yearly 22,000 euros. Exceeding that amount of 22,000 euros yearly would mean that VAT would have to be charged from the next calendar year on. So if 22,000 euros have been reached in 2020, this year would be the obligation to charge VAT. If the total revenue came close to 22,000 euro. Some clients were asking if it would be better to deny a job to not exceed the small business revenue limit, because of course there's a lot of extra work what would have been done. So checking the invoices to clients, in a lot of cases, we could find out that there was actually room for additional revenue. Regarding VAT, it is important to know some of these details. To get to the next point with the freelancers, besides the VAT, the freelancers also have to submit a yearly income tax declaration. That can be seen on the next slide. A part of the income tax declarations for freelancers is a profit and loss statement in the so-called appendix, or in German, Anlage EUR. The profit and loss statement has to be filed after the rules of the German income taxation code. The type of expenses that can be taken into account is more or less the same as for the employees, that can be seen on the slide where it says types of expenses to be taken into account. So for the it is just a different way of calculating the income, where the employers get their wage tax certificates. The freelancer would have to calculate basically him or herself. After having seen the points regarding employees and freelancers separately, they appear in combination also. For these hybrid working forms, the rules for employees and freelancers apply at the same time. So here, the relevant types of taxes are VAT and income tax. The types of tax declarations and due dates can be seen on the slide we have seen before. Even if the headline here says temporary employments, it applies, of course, also to constant part-time employments in combination with freelancing. Now we get to a special scenario, the last one we saw in the introduction, especially with dancers. It happens a lot that they get invited to dance in galas or to teach for other companies or schools in foreign countries. So it seemed important to me to at least quickly mention these foreign overseas assignments. Being a resident in Germany, there is an unlimited tax duty with the obligation to declare the worldwide income. To avoid double taxation, there are double tax agreements between Germany and most industrial nations. Most of the double tax agreements contain a special regulation for artists. Since there are so many countries Germany has a double income tax agreement with, due to the limitation of time, it would lead too far to point out specialties with different countries. Generally, it can be said that no matter if the job is on an employment or freelance basis, most of the double tax agreements between Germany and other countries allocate the taxation right to the country the artist has performed in, and of that the income tax paid in that foreign country from the German income tax. That mostly works the way that the foreign company does not pay out the full amount, but withholds a percentage of tax. The German tax office always claims a proof that the income has been taxed in the other country. So it is important to collect the tax certificates from the foreign client. Otherwise, the tax has to be paid in Germany on that income. It is possible to hand in the tax certificate later also, but from my experience, it is very hard to get this, because when filing the tax declaration in Germany, the foreign overseas assignment, it's mostly about a year ago. So the foreign company also, it costs time and research, who needs what, and it takes a while until they send it. So the German tax office takes the tax on that, and the tax assessment gets revised then after handing in the tax certificate from the foreign country. The regulations can be different in detail from this general rule in the single double tax agreement. That's what I mentioned now is just from the OECD sample double tax agreement. And to get to the next slide, besides the double tax agreement topic, there can also be special situations, like, for example, dancing in Tokyo, Japan, for a company in Great Britain, where neither the double tax agreement between Germany and Japan, nor the one between Germany and Great Britain would apply. So the treatment of foreign assignments in different countries can be very different. The individual case always has to be checked. Since income with foreign reference is quite complex, we cannot go into further detail now, but if there are enough interested people, we could maybe plan another presentation to this topic. So what did we learn today? For only employees, only the income tax is relevant. For freelancers, as well as dancers doing both employment and freelancing, VAT is also relevant. For residents in Germany, employees as well as freelancers, the worldwide income principle applies, meaning that all income has to be declared independently from the tax treatment in the end. Some income might be tax-free, but still has to be declared. My experience is that also quite often, depending on the person at the tax office working on the tax declaration, the person at the tax office does not know things exactly, especially with respect to income with foreign references. When working in a foreign country, always ask for the tax certificate to avoid double taxation in Germany. I would like to end my presentation today with mentioning some good to knows that could also be helpful. It is not directly tax related, but still very relevant for dancers. Especially for the freelancers, an important point is joining the Künstlersozialkasse for all obligational branches of Social Security. To join the Künstlersozialkasse, an application is necessary. The application can also be denied. Then it would have to be checked by a lawyer if it's okay or if there are chances to somehow get in. The reason or the advantage from joining the Künstlersozialkasse is that actually the dancer only has to pay half of the amount due for the Social Security. The other half is covered from the Künstlersozialkasse, or short KSK. For the employees, but also for freelancers, it could be helpful to be member of a union. There is, for example, the VDO, GdBA, or Verdi. These unions help dancers also I guess probably it's a bit more important for the employees, because those unions help, for example, also if a dancer gets an invitation to the talk that has to take place before there is a letter of not renewal of the contract. And also for the employees, an interesting topic is the Versorgungsanstalt der Deutschen Bühnen, which is like a second pension fund for the dancers. And there are also different options dancers can use. So that would be all for today from my side. So thank you very much for your attention and have a nice rest of the evening. And if you have any questions, I will still be here for a while.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heike. Great. Yeah, and I think what the stream, I'm actually quite happy about this because it took me many hours. The stream seems to have worked. I just wanted to say before as well, a small note that came to me now. The stream will also be published in our YouTube as a private video, so people cannot find it, but people with a link can then find it later on. Again, if you would have any problems with this, let me or anyone, or Dominic or anyone from the team know, and we will also then black you out, take your name out, and all these things as well, just so you all feel safe in this new digital world. And I don't know if you got any questions, Dominic, so far. And keep in mind also, this is the moment to ask questions. So no question is too stupid. Even if you have a question, what is the Stoya number? Is also a fine question to ask. We're here to learn, all of us, and we all have different backgrounds, different experiences. And if you're completely new in Germany or thinking about moving to Germany to work, you can also ask any question now as well. And if you have any questions, they're also separate, because we have Tom here as well, who is not a professional Steuerberater yet, but he was a dancer before in Leipzig, so he comes from the both. He's like the hybrid between the two scenes as well. So if you have any more specific questions coming from a dance scene as well, he's also here to answer your questions. So Dominic?
I do have questions. I think it would be maybe good that we take like a little break now, like 5 minutes, just so that people can get up, use the bathroom, get something to drink. I've collected quite a few tickets as of right now, quite a few questions as of right now. And when we come back, just keep writing them to me in the chat. I'll continue to collect them. And then after this break, I will just start reading through the list and letting the experts tackle the questions. Okay, so we'll say I have here 748, 1948. So we say 1953. Everyone back? We'll be very precise about it. Okay, see you all soon.
So I think we're slowly coming back. I don't know exactly what time you said, Dominic, but if you guys are around, I think you can slowly start to come back to your computer and we will start the questions soon. And whenever you feel ready, Dominic, you can just jump in and take over. I will also keep an eye on the stream as well. And if somebody has a question from there, I will also bring it up into the meeting.
Yes. Hi. Sorry, everyone. It's great because there's a whole lot of questions, but unfortunately, I'm just running a little bit behind collecting them all. So I think what I'm going to do is just read the first one and let Heike answer it, and then kind of multitask, which I'm not super great at. So I'll apologize in advance. Okay. So the first question on my list is, if I've already expensed these examples given are travel expenses and training in another country, such as the United States of America, am I not to deduct these in my German taxes?
These expenses can be deducted in the German taxes, and no matter where the expenses arose, as long as it is work related, it can be deducted. And it's a bit hard to say if it's gonna work filing the taxes yourself. Because sometimes the tax office questions this if you include also the flight costs, flat fee food allowances, the classes, and so on. So, but generally, I mean, it is possible to at least partly deduct flight costs. For example, if you stayed 2 weeks and the classes were for 1 week, you could deduct half of the flight costs and the flat fee food allowances for this 1 week, besides the actual costs for the classes. And it must be, of course, for the same calendar year where you have had income in Germany.
Okay, the next one is, what kind of education can be declared on your taxes? Is there any guidelines as to what sort of qualifies as for the educational tax deduction?
No, actually not. The only thing what would have to be shown to the tax office is that there is already a finished professional education in something, that you are professional. And then, what could happen is that the tax office qualifies the educational cost in another category, but it's still tax deductible. If you already have finished an education, you can deduct it from as like working expenses. But if the tax office, for example, says, yeah, well, but that's something completely different, basically, I would say in Germany, it would depend on the degree the first education has. Because sometimes education from a foreign country is not set equal to the German degree, and then they might question it. But it also, my experience is, it depends on who processes the tax declaration at the tax office. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, what's the exact difference between VAT and income tax?
The exact difference, it's basically the income tax is, in German, it's Ertragssteuer, so it's like profit tax, whereas the VAT is it's called Verkehrssteuer. It's, those are different types of taxes. So this is for what's the best English expression for this? service dealings. It's it's hard to.
Tax. I think
What?
value-added tax is usually something that's more in relation to service or goods, whereas income tax is a wage.
It depends on the individual, and the it's two different types of taxes. So one is the income you actually earn, and the other is you have the revenue you have brings a value to somebody else, and that's the tax on this value. So how could we explain this? I mean, it's important to know that it's completely different. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Tom, if you have an idea how to, in German it's easy, but
could it be something that results from the type of contract or the type of work? Could you explain it? Does income come?
No, it's the income tax, employees are only affected by the income tax, and the VAT affects the entrepreneurs, the freelancers.
Okay, so
and they are affected by both.
And is it something that maybe comes from the way that they bill, perhaps? Is it that? No,
it's it's just two different type of taxes, and I guess the easiest way to deal with it is to just remember, as a freelancer, I have to also keep in mind that I'm affected by VAT.
Also, when you wrote an invoice to a company, then it's important for a freelancer.
Does it mean that if you're invoicing, you're affected by VAT versus if you are engaged by the company, you are not? Is that a differentiation?
Yes, because when you are employed, the employer already takes care, basically, of your taxation. I mean, the employer does not know your individual case. What else do you have? So you have still the obligation to declare this. But the VAT, that invoices are affected. So once you're invoicing, you have to deal with this issue, VAT, no matter if you decide to, or you have to, or you decide to charge VAT or not.
Okay, so VAT effectively affects
only the freelancers, not the employees.
And specifically freelancers who are billing their services through invoices versus freelancers who are signing a contract as an employee. Is that correct? Have I understood that correct?
Yes, I mean, I am in the German sense, because I think in English, the freelancers, I mean, the short-time employed freelancers are also considered freelancers. In
Yes.
German, it's not, because once you sign a contract at a theater, it's an employment, even if it's just for 2 weeks or a day.
Got it.
So not freelancing.
Yeah, okay. Good.
So invoicing has to do with VAT. So that probably explains it a bit better. Yeah.
Great. I'm gonna just move us along, because there's a lot of questions. It's really nice, but I'm already worried that we even get through them all. This is what is meant with exemptions and Freistellung as the example.
This is that as an artist, you can claim for a certificate that a certain code in the VAT tax law applies to you. But the federal state government has to prove, okay, this person is an artist and offers these services, and then you are actually exempted from the VAT by law.
And am I right to understand that you have to apply separately for that
Yeah.
exemption?
Yes.
So you have to register kind of as an entrepreneur and then register as an artist entrepreneur?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, this is a bit of a difficult issue because you would have to think about, does it make sense for me to be exempted from VAT? Because, for example, if you want to buy a car and there is input tax on the bill, for example, I buy a car for 10,000 euros net, then the VAT would be 1,900. And these 1,900 come back to you with a preliminary turnover tax declaration or the yearly, depending on how often you have to file this VAT tax declarations. Yeah, so sometimes I do have cases where I figured it actually does not make sense to apply for this because they had quite high expenses. So we said, okay, we wait 5 years and then change this if it makes sense. But if you buy high equipment, it sometimes does not make sense to do this. So it's really, if somebody is planning, it really, in this case, it would make sense to get advice.
Okay.
Because the individual situations are very different.
All right. Okay, here's one. It's I applied for and received a certificate declaring I am umsatzsteuerfrei because because I made more than the limit amount. It was dated and issued January 1st, 2020. Does this mean it is good for 4 years now, or do I have to reapply every time I earn more than 22,000 euros?
What certificate is it? Is it from the federal tax government, or did just the tax office say that no preliminary tax declarations? I didn't really get the first point, what type of certificate it is.
I believe it's federal, if I have understood this correctly.
Okay. If it is federal, that means that all revenue that concerned from this certificate are tax-free by law. So it would be possible to make tax-free revenue as much as you want, and also 22,000 euros as Kleinunternehmer, for example. That would be possible without having to charge and pay VAT.
But would they have to reapply each time? Or?
No, this certificate is valid until circumstances change. Then I mean, yeah, for example, I mean, if you get this as an individual artist, it's valid forever until you stop working as an artist. For schools, for example, you have to, meanwhile, they request, the federal state government requests who is teaching there. So you would have to give the name of teachers and also tell them the qualification of the teacher, and the teachers' names are very often, it depends on which state, but they are on the certificate. So if the teachers change, you have to send them the name of the teachers again. And so the federal state government, if they find, oh, this person is not a professional or is not professional enough, they could say, okay, the class this teacher is teaching is not exempted, for example. It does not really happen, but could, in theory, could happen.
Okay, just as a follow-up, could you say the name in German of this, the full name of the certificate in German? Someone is asking.
It's a Bescheinigung über Umsatzsteuerbefreiung.
Okay, I never got that.
It has some paragraphs also. It's for number 20, 21.
Good, maybe, yeah, we'll, it's okay.
Yeah, but that's really special. I mean, if somebody's planning on that or has special questions, it's really recommendable to ask somebody professional.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna keep moving on because we're slowly worried about time. If I was paid Krankenverletzungsgeld throughout the year, does that affect the amount of money I will be entitled to after declaration? I guess.
Well, I mean, first of all, there is an obligation if Verletztengeld or Krankengeld was received. And I mean, this is not, I mean, it's not really nice, but this very often ends up in a tax payment, but doesn't help. There's the obligation to file the tax declaration. I mean, in this case, you can just try if there were other circumstances that could maybe lower taxes, but yeah, I mean, the tax office knows about the amount of Verletztengeld and also has the wage tax certificate. So, but the individual still has the obligation to electronically submit the tax declaration.
Okay. Okay, the next question is, how do I declare monthly full scholarship by the state of Saxony? Or
scholarships for education would be tax-free. If it's for cultural, educational purposes, would be tax-free. I mean, I have those cases a lot when for certain productions people get scholarships, and we always declare it in there's in the profit and loss statement Anlage EUR, it's quite on the bottom. It says word tax-free income. It has, I would always declare it, then it's open for discussion that the tax office cannot say you tried to cheat on this.
So you would declare it in the area where you have tax-free.
Tax-free. And what is also important, that expenses in connection with tax-free income cannot be deducted, of course, because that would not make any sense. The tax office does not give you any benefit for tax-free things.
Okay. Okay, the next question is, do only invoices count as revenue for Kleinunternehmer, or short-time employee contracts? Do short-time employee contracts count as well? I mostly mean to add up for an eventual change of status, passing the small business limit and having to pay that in the following year.
No, short-time employments do not count to Kleinunternehmer, only the invoices.
Okay. Can I put the costs of insurances such as KSK or car insurance, etc., to my expenses as a freelancer?
No, not really. It does not lower the profit. It's a different category. The category is called Sonderausgaben, and those expenses go into the appendix Anlagevorsorgeaufwendungen.
Okay. What do I do if I've made a mistake during declaration?
Well, basically, if you find that you made a mistake, you have the obligation to tell them. The other way around, if the tax office makes a mistake to your advantage, you're not obliged to tell them that they made a mistake. But if you find you made a mistake, which leads to a higher tax, you should you have to tell them. I mean, if you find out you made a mistake and it would lower taxes, it depends if it's changeable. I mean, after a month has passed, the due date for the complaint is over. So changing it then, this is very complicated. So, yeah.
Okay, and I think write to me if it's wrong, but I think there was kind of a follow-up to this, which was if you have made a mistake during declaration, how would you go about it? Is there a form available on the internet for correction, or?
Well, actually, I would not really recommend to do without professional help, because this is very tricky, because if it leads to a higher tax, in Germany, the tax office very often then says, well, you try to cheat on the tax, because it really, if you do this, you would have to, it has to be complete. So every single thing, even foreign income or whatever, would have to be in. There's no special form. You could just write a letter. I'm very sorry, I did a mistake. I forgot to declare income 1, 2, 3, but it would have to be complete to not get problems.
Okay. Do I have to be registered in Germany to register as a freelancer in Germany, or can I have my address be registered in another country and still register as a freelancer in Germany?
Well, if you're not resident in Germany, you are not freelancing in Germany. I mean, you could still have a limited tax duty in Germany, but these cases, this really depends on like so many single details that would have to be individually checked.
Okay. I am marrying another freelance dancer in a few weeks. What does this mean for our taxes? Any advice or tips that could help us understand what we need to do? Congratulations, by the way, to getting married.
Yes, congrats. And well, as freelancers, there is no tax class. I mean, in the end, you have the option to decide next year if you want to file your taxes together, your income tax declarations for the year 2021 or not, and you just choose the better option for you.
Okay. As a freelancer, is there any guideline on how much we can count on our expenses from using our own apartment as our own office, now even as a training site? And I heard about the Trainingsleiterpauschale. If my main work is as a dancer and I sometimes teach, can the money earned from teaching be declared with the Trainingsleiterpauschale?
No, these are two different things. So this Übungsleiterpauschale would only work if it's not a full-time job and you do this for a non-profit organization or state organization. That's the Übungsleiterpauschale is these 2,400 euros, from this year 3,000 euros a year, that can stay tax-free, but only work if the working hours spent with this type of work does not exceed 1/3 in comparison to a full-time job. So the tax office, if the working hours are in the average of the calendar year less than 14 hours, then it would generally be possible that 3,000 euros this year stay tax-free, but it only works if the client is a non-profit organization or a state organization. As state schools, for example, would work, or e.V. would work. And to the question with the apartment costs, this depends. I mean, it must be a separate room apart from living room and other rooms. Otherwise, the proportionate rent cannot be deducted. What they give you now for 2020 and 2021 is the Corona Home Office flat fee of maximum 600 euros. it's €5 per day, maximum 120 days.
Okay. Could we have a bit more information regarding how to register or apply for the quarterly income tax prepayment that you are recommending for the freelancers?
This is for this, you also do not have a special form. You can just write a letter or an Elster note. That's probably the easiest to do it with because most freelancers probably do have an Elster certificate meanwhile due to the Corona help. For the help programs, this was mandatory to have if you did it yourself. It's, I guess the easiest way would be to just write the tax office. And what's also important is to give them some numbers that, or you say, I would like to make a prepayment of €500 a quarter. And then they send you an assessment about this. And if you figure, oh, my income is higher, lower, you can apply for adjustment.
Okay. If I am not from the EU, does it change anything for taxes and declarations if I'm
No.
Living and working in Germany?
No.
Okay. I am wondering if there is a good tax app online that can help a freelance dancer well with tax declaration, if you have recommendations.
Well, actually, I don't know what apps are around for this because, I mean, of course, I mean, in my office, in my business, we have professional software for this. It's hard to say. I mean, there are so many details that that matter for taxes. I know there are some programs around, but actually I don't have any hints how good or bad they are. I don't know, Tom, if you have some, but
that's fine. What should an artist be aware of if they receive a stipendium and still have separate contracts for other projects as a freelancer? Is there a different deduction for Stipendien? For instance, the Aufgangsforderung von Ministerium für Kunst und Wissenschaft in NRW.
Actually, no, the Förderung is what we said before, that is tax-free. And yeah, this actually, it will have to be declared as tax-free income.
Okay. How do I get a Steuernummer? I am a student in Germany and I'm about to graduate, so I'm doing this transition to the professional world. This person is from an overseas country, they would like to mention. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends if the first job is an employment. Right now, no action would be needed. Because the tax number is given to the person then when handing in the tax declaration, if they have to do one and if they decide to do that. As a freelancer, for a Steuernummer, there would have to be filled in a questionnaire, which is also online, available online. And then you fill in your data and like they ask you questions like besides address and the basic data, of course, how much revenue are you planning? Is tax-free revenue what we said, like the revenue that's exempted from VAT planned and stuff like that. And then they send you a tax number. I mean, with filing this questionnaire, it can also be a bit tricky because if you don't know about what to fill in, it could be that it ends up that they answer, yes, here's the tax number and please make prepayments in this amount or something. So in this case, it also would make sense to talk this over with somebody who's familiar with this.
Okay. If I have income, if I have an income that is also freelance based, but maybe not directly dance related, such as teaching yoga or festival management, etc., do I declare it together with the rest of my profit and loss statement, or do I need to make a separate income and loss statement for my VAT?
Yes, I mean, you're still one person, one entrepreneur. So for the VAT, all the VAT for all those jobs goes together in one VAT tax declaration. But regarding the income tax, for different professions and different things, different profit and loss statements would have to be filed.
Okay. Can freelance artists or dancers who are registered as Kleinunternehmer also file for deductions in clothing, travel tickets? But I think you said yes to that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I get a Steuer number as a student? I believe that you covered that just now.
Yes, you can get, of course, because you can be a student and also a freelancer. So that, and you would even have to.
Yeah.
But,
okay. 22.000 Euro ist das Einkommen, welches ausgezahlt wird, oder der Betrag, der nach der Euro übrig bleibt?
Nur der Umsatz, just the revenue, just the money that's on the invoice, what the client pays before deducting anything, not the profit.
Okay. Oh, the education, does it have to be dance related? But I believe you said it doesn't have to be, it just has to be provided as a proof of...
Second education. Mm-hmm.
Could I add German language classes to this educational part of the taxes? I guess that's a yes, if it's...
Yes, I mean, in this special case, I would say yes, because you can always reason that you live here in Germany, a ballet master is German and I need to understand him better. Or if you're teaching, I teach German students, I have to speak to them better. So this, I mean, the tax office probably tries to deny the costs, but with good reasoning, you can get it.
Okay. And my last one, and then Jonathan has a couple from our YouTube streamers. Bei der Steuerveranlagung für die Einkommens- oder Körperschaftssteuer wird das Stipendium gewinnwirksam berücksichtigt. Does this sentence from a stipendium bescheid still mean that the stipend can be declared as tax-free income or must?
Yes. I mean, it depends a bit. I mean, we would have to check or know exactly what it says on the Stipendium Bescheid to find the category where it goes to.
But wouldn't it still be effectively like the other stipendium that you would somehow declare it as a tax-free?
Förderung is a bit, I mean, there are different types. I mean, basically those Stipendium, Förderung, they are tax-free.
And you're obliged to
important, yeah, but for the tax-free, that it is tax-free, it's important that the person who gets it is not obliged to do something for it. You know, they cannot say, how do you say Gegenleistung? Something in exchange, you know. So to get the stipendium, you don't have to do something for this in exchange for this money. So then that has to be the case for the tax-freeness.
Okay. Sorry, I just have one very last one before I give it over to you, Jonathan. Do I have to declare a Spende received from a theater I worked as a guest for?
Yes. Spende is because as long as you're not a non-profit organization, no matter how they call it, everything what you get for your work is income.
Okay, that's all for my questions. I'll let you take over, Jonathan.
Yes, so we have 3 people that ask questions from the stream. The first one is from Amy, who asked, is the 22,000 euro small business revenue limit the amount before expenses have been taken off? For instance, if one has earned 24,000 euro in a year and has 2,500 euro of expenses to deduct, are they considered small business?
No, only 22,000 is the revenue before deducting anything.
Okay, and then we have Margarita asked as well, if I just started working in Germany as a freelancer, then I'm not paying VAT, right? Or do I have to ask for an exemption certificate? What do I need to write an invoice?
If the business has just been started, basically the small business regulation can be applied, but you must know then if you start now, it's not 22,000 euros for this year. You have to divide these 22,000 by 12 and take this then 7 times from June to December. So it would be, if I calculate it quickly, let's say you start in June, then you could only earn 12,833 this year to not exceed the limit. So it's only proportionate if you start during the year. And for all full years, it's to 22,000.
Okay. And the last question from Francisco. If I do massages to people in my own house as a private thing, apart from my freelance jobs, do I have to invoice people and declare the money?
There was an interruption in my connection, sorry.
Yeah, no, the question was, if I do massages to people in my own house as a private thing, apart from my freelance job, do I have to invoice people and declare that money?
Yes. So basically, I mean, all you do for money, you know, I mean, the only exception would be if it's really a hobby and the tax office considers, but still, I mean, mostly it's the way that you say that, okay, I had like 100 euros of income, my expenses were 200 and you declare minus 100. Then the tax office very often says, yeah, well, but this, you have only created so they will not accept a loss that lowers tax, but it's always better to, my opinion is it's always better to open the discussion and leave the points open that you can still argue for it. But I mean, like things like massage and so services, mostly you don't have that high expenses. So some money stays with you, so that is considered income.
Yeah, thank you. I had one last question I got over email now, actually, from a participant who already left us, just for me to be able to answer her. She asked if there's any possibility for, because it benefits the tax situation, to register as a freelancer in Germany and not be registered living in Germany.
Well, that's not possible because you have to, the tax duty is connected with your residency or not residency in Germany. So for if you're a resident in Germany, you do have an unlimited tax declaration. For I mean, if you want to register as a freelancer, you would have, for example, have to rent an office to say, okay, you have at least an office residency where your revenue goes to.
Yeah.
So some registration would be necessary.
Yes. Yeah, then I don't have any more questions. I don't know if anyone else in the meeting has any questions.
I received one more. Is there an invoice program you would recommend for freelancers?
Actually, I don't really know. Well, maybe Tom has an idea, but we use, I mean, yeah, if you work in the professional business, you have your own software. Actually, I mean, what I do sometimes with my clients, if they are new here, I say, okay, let's meet or make a Zoom meeting. I can set up like a sample invoice for you with you together. But it's hard to say because it always depends on also who's your client. Do I charge VAT? Do I do Kleinunternehmer? But even if you are Kleinunternehmer, if your client is somebody in a foreign country, you would have to add to this invoice the reverse charge system applies instead of the hint to the Kleinunternehmer. So it changes also.
Okay, because there was a sort of follow-up question about templates, but it sounds like it's a bit more complicated than a one-size-fits-all for invoicing, in terms of just having like one muster that you could send to everyone. It really depends on them.
Yeah, that's a bit hard. I mean, yeah.
I wanted just to follow up on that, because we also spoke about this, to maybe create a small little info template or info folder with information gathered from these meetings that then will be sent out to whoever who wants it later as well. So this is also maybe something we can have, like a very, very simple invoice template or a base where you can see like one example of an invoice as well in this. I don't know if this will answer the question, but it might be something we can put in there as well.
Yes, I mean, of course, it's possible to say like, okay, in this case, an invoice would look like this, or in another case, then it would like this, or yeah.
I also have one more question from the chat, actually. One more question is this: within this 22,000 limit, is scholarships included, or are scholarships included?
No, because the VAT always is like I do the service and get money for it. If I get money without offering something, the one part is missing. So it's in German, it's Leistung und Gegenleistung. So if the Gegenleistung is missing, there's no VAT.
Okay. We also had one question. I was talking to one of the participants throughout the meeting now, and she also asked if we as a Dance Connect have a list of recommended Steuerberater, Orinnen. Maybe this is something that we could also then put together with you, Heike and Tom, or other people that we know, or people that we can then refer to as Steuerberater or Orinnen as well in the future. Because we also have a question as well from a chat member here, is that how much does Steuerberater actually cost, more or less?
Well, hard to say. It always depends on how, well, I mean, my experience is that a lot of tax consultant offices, they are not used to work with artists, and they handle it like a normal business, which is not correct. Do not know specialties really, but on the other hand, they say like, yeah, well, the income is not as high, just, yeah, to do it quickly, write the bill, and that's it. So that was my experience. And when I was employed, it was handled like this. And so since I do have the dance background myself, and I like to work with the artists, I chose actually, I mean, I did the exam myself. I can run my own business. And well, it's normal tax. It probably depends on the city you live in, but for individual tax declarations, mostly I would say starting from 150 to, for not too complex cases, 500. Really, it depends. I don't know, Tom, how it is in your city. In Munich, it's more high up, I guess. I mean, yeah.
Yes, it's really hard to say, actually, because If you have no VAT, it's easier for the Steuerberater, maybe. Yeah. If you're
Yeah.
just working on the theater, you have not much traveling costs or something like that. You are not working in some other countries, then it's easier. So it's really like individuality.
It's really hard to say. I mean, what I do is if somebody just starts, I agree on a flat fee as like a starting help. Because mostly I figured actually if people are happy with you, they would not change the tax advisor, because you start to tell your whole life story again to the next person, which is also, I mean, you don't want to do this every year probably, because you have better things to do. So I mean, yeah, you can always ask tax consultants if it's possible to charge on a flat fee basis. I mean, it probably depends how much this person would then tell you what that would be.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I have no more questions. I don't know if you, Dominic, or if anyone else in the meeting.
I have one more. Oh, sorry, I just have two. One is, does my Steuerberater or Steuerberaterin have to be based in the same city or in the same state as I do?
No, it has to be somebody from Germany, but it doesn't matter. You can pick whoever you like.
Okay, and then the last one I have is, if you receive funding as a freelancer for your own project, does this officially need to be communicated to the Finanzamt, just to clarify with them that it is not all income because it is being used to pay other dancers?
Well, yes, that's just what we said. There is this section where it says tax-free income. Of course, it's only tax-free if it's a funding from the state or nonprofit organizations who are entitled to do that. I mean, mostly it's only valid for fundings from the state, but the whole income would be tax-free, but the expenses cannot be deducted. So in the end, if it's tax-free, it doesn't matter for what the money was used.
Okay. That's it for me, and I think we should probably cut there since we're already 10 minutes over.
We can take one. I mean, the last question was from Cordelia, just as one finishing of question, and then we wrap it up after that.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to what we just said. So if that that money is not tax-free eventually, if I find out that there was a Förderung or a stipend and it actually does need to be declared as an Einkommen, but some of that money is used for the production costs or for Personalkosten, how do I go about that?
Then it would be regular income, and all costs are deducted in the categories. As a freelancer, you have this Anlage EUR, and it says, for example, for the other dancers, you put it into Fremdleistungen, office material, or whatever there is. But as I said, even if you think it's definitely tax-free, it's highly recommended to fill it into the tax declaration, just that in the end they cannot say, yeah, well, you did not tell us this, and then you would have problems.
Okay, thank you.
So then I would like to first thank Heike for the presentation and all these great answers. Also Tom for helping out as well. And it was nice to see all of you here as well. And maybe, I don't know if some of you guys signed up for both meetings. So we will see each other then next Sunday again. And also to you on the stream as well. I hope it worked out. It looked like it. But please give us feedback how it was. If something didn't work, we can maybe fix it until Sunday. And also from you guys as well in the meeting, that if it was something you thought about, something that could be improved, something we can do differently, something you liked, you can also email us or let us know at any time on the info@danceconnect.de. So I will then end this meeting here. thank you so much again, and have a good Sunday.
Thank you.